I truly believe nothing, or almost nothing, great happens without first having a great connection. Would you agree? And I don't mean the LinkedIn type, no, the connection, but I mean, well, it could start there, but I mean a real, live, personal connection where you feel good having met someone and feel good about you. That's a connection. I get the boxing question all the time because I use boxing as a metaphor, networking, boxing, speaking of connections. I remember being in my gym 9 years ago and staring longingly, probably too long, at a guy jumping rope in the mirror. And I realized he looked pretty cool, so I had to learn how to do this. So I walked up to him, and he seemed actually annoyed that I was bothering him. He saw me coming up, looked in the mirror, took his music off, and what? So I said, okay, you need to teach me how to do that. I'm going to call this guy Dan, because that's his name. So Dan, so he gives me some pointers and said, well, let me see what you can do. And I didn't have very much. I had no game. He said, see, you can jump rope. I said, yeah, but not like you. He said, come back to me when you can do 20, and we'll talk. Took his rope back, turned his back on me, put his music back in, and went back to the do-si-do. So now it's on, because I can't go back to my gym with any self-respect until I have conquered this. So I remember going online, had a jump rope, and bought one, and it went everywhere with me. And after some weeks, I finally went back up to Dan and said, I can do this. Gave me some more pointers, and of course, Dan's a boxer. So Dan introduces me to a guy that I'm going to call Jimmy, because that's his name. And Jimmy's a pro boxer who teaches. He said, you look like you can hit something. I mean, jumping rope, that's what you're hiring me for? So the jumping rope thing, 15 minutes, I had it licked. But then before I knew it, I had wraps, 16-ounce gloves on. He showed me the basics of a jab and a cross and everything else. Before I knew it, I was in the ring, and I was doing some pretty cool things. Could you argue that's a networking story? Of course. Right? You go to the right place, say the right thing, meet the right people. You ask a question of somebody. You ask the right question, you get the right answer. You don't ask the question, the answer is always no. Boxing, like networking, is about the connection. Now, there's 5 reasons why people proactively look to make connections a la networking. 5 reasons I have decided, not just now, but I've decided. And one is to land a job. Land a job. 76% of job searchers, those that have been upsized, downsized, right-sized, left-sized, supersized, are landing interviews, internships, and jobs. All about where to go, what to say, and with whom. Land a job. Second reason why people network is to write business, to generate referrals, even to hire somebody. I would put that in the more business bucket. A third reason why people network is to learn something. Learn about boxing. Learn about a product, a service, an industry, profession, market segment, niche, dynamic, demographic, geography. If you know what it is that you need to learn, you'll know precisely where you need to go, what you need to say, with whom you need to say it. A fourth reason why people network is social reasons. Ever hear of Facebook? Ever hear of Instagram? Social reasons, so to meet people in an effort to make friends, and this is the offline variety. To date, not to date, you know, but to date, right? I wish I knew this stuff when I was single. I'm just saying. Or to meet the love of your life. And the fifth reason why people network is to solve a very specific problem. My mom has Parkinson's disease, a very rare form of Parkinson's disease. And I can't network enough to learn more about meds and treatments and doctors and all kinds of stuff. My point, I live and breathe this stuff, man. I live and breathe the connection. I don't think that networking and the ability to make more and better connections is a switch that you flip when you're looking to land a job or an internship. I believe the switch has always got to be flipped. It's always got to be on, baby. Peripheral's always wide, switch always flipped, because you are more likely to capture an opportunity for yourself or to help others if you're already thinking like a networker. So what gets in the way? Fear. Fear gets in the way. But really, what's the worst thing that can happen, really? If you go to the right place, say the right thing, meet the right people. Now, I'm a big rules guy, akin to a couple of boxers being in the middle of the ring and being told the rules before the bell rings. And I remember, I do a lot of business travel, and I remember coming home after extended travel. And I've got 2 little girls in the form of my daughters, Jessica and Julia. Jessica is 12, Julia is 8. When Jessica was 6, so follow the math, roughly 6 years ago, I come home from a business trip. And I'm unpacking the bags, and I see little Jet, as we call her, on the bedroom floor, kind of leaning up against the wall, sizing me up. I could tell there was something she wanted to say. What's going on, Jet? Talk to me. I said, Daddy, aren't you the boss? Right, well, you know, the wife is the boss, right? You know, the client is the boss. And I said, sometimes, maybe, what's going on? What's on your mind? She said, Daddy, if you're the boss, how come you're never home? Talk about a straight right shot over a weak jab. Like what do you do with that? You know, we explain it, right? So put her on the bed, got eye contact with her, and what are we going to do about this, Jet? So now we played scavenger hunt around the house, and we found like a paper month-at-a-glance calendar, you know, a booklet with spiral on it. Do you know what that is? I teach a class at Rutgers University. My students have no idea what that is. I'm not sure if any of you do, but we found one. And this was in May, and I had 3 bookings that fell on Fridays that would take me out of town throughout the summer. So we furthered the scavenger hunt and became pink and purple crayons that were Xing out the remaining Fridays of the summer, and I promised them that they would be our day, Daddy and Jessica Day. At the time, I was concerned about business, but business actually increased. A different story for a different day. On one of the first Daddy and Jessica Days, we find ourselves in a public pool. Have you been to a public pool even lately? It's like a financial transaction just getting in, right? Because you got to sign paperwork, keep the carbon, pay a couple of bucks, couple of forms of ID, give them your shoes. It's kind of like being at the airport. Throughout the financial transaction of entering the public pool, I've got little Jet over here. I'm signing something, you know, keep the carbon. And Jessica points at the sign, this very pretty sign. So look, Daddy, sign. And the sign is attached to the fence. You know the sign, right? It's the rules. It's all the stuff you can't do, according to Board of Health and OSHA. I thought that was brilliant, because everybody in the US and Canada too know what all those pool rules are. Don't you? You know, the whole no running, no splashing, no swimming, no fun sign. You know the sign. I thought this was brilliant, not for that reason, but I was thinking to help people connect and help people network. Can you imagine if there was a sign like that by law, according to Board of Health and OSHA, had to be affixed to the fence or attached to the wall at every alumni meeting, every mixer, every networking club, every conference, convention, trade show, product show, dog show, if by law that sign had to be there, except it was about networking and connecting, all the do's and don'ts. So I simply wrote them. I wrote 23. I am not going to cover them all right now, but I will cover a handful. And the first that I want to discuss or weigh in with is, you're not going to connect with everybody, so don't try. You're not going to connect with everybody, so don't try. I believe that if you meet 10 people, that you'll probably only really connect with 3 of them. I refer to that dynamic as the one-thirder dynamic. One-thirder, as in 1/3 of the time, there'll be a connection. So now the other 7, not a very good connection. That's the 2/3 dynamic. Have you ever been to a party even, and you're talking to somebody, and it's like pulling teeth? 2/3 dynamic. Have you ever been to some sort of an event where there's other folks, and you find yourself cornered by somebody, you can't get a word in edgewise, and they drone on and on and on about themselves? That ever happened to you? If that's never happened to you, it's you. 2/3 dynamic. Focus on the 1/3ers. Focus on the folks that you have a connection with. I'm not suggesting the 2/3 dynamic means you hate somebody. I hate you. It just means that there's just not a great connection. The second rule is no selling. You can't sell yourself. There is a time and place for that. So it shouldn't be a place where you're handing out resumes or business cards. Not appropriate. Networking and connecting, in my mind, is about learning and helping. That's what it's about. It's about learning others and learning from others and potentially helping them, preferably the 1/3ers. It is not about selling a product or a service. It is not about asking for a job or landing an internship. In fact, I like to suggest that networking and connecting, if done properly, is about helping others and ultimately creating a we dynamic, a we, as in you, me, we, as in how can we help one another. It should feel like a collaboration. Even as a student, it should still feel like a collaboration. No selling ever, ever, never. There is a time and place for that. The languaging is about how can we help one another. Another rule is I believe that you have to have a target market. You have to have a marketplace that you are focused on, whether it's landing a job, writing business, whatever it is. And I define a target marketplace as whom you serve best and therefore wish to serve most, or where you choose to do your most or best work. It's industry, profession, market segment, niche, dynamic, demographic, geography. Because if you know exactly with whom your target market is or could be, from a connecting standpoint, you might have a clue as to where you might go, what you might say, and with whom you might say it to. Another rule, you need to know how to ask questions, and you should ask lots of questions of people. Questions like, so what type of work do you do? What are you looking to do? How did you learn of this event? Are you a first-timer like me, or have you been here before? Do you have a target market? If so, why? If not, why not? What is it that you're looking to accomplish here? Who is a prospect for you? Tell me what would be worth the price of admission at this meeting to happen for you. Like, what needs to happen to make this just worth the trip? Ask questions like that. In fact, my measure is this. Ask people questions that you would have them ask of you. Because if you ask the right question in a one-thirder dynamic situation, it sounds very clinical, doesn't it? Is most folks will say, the one-thirders, how about yourself? And now you're coming from a place of we. You're exchanging niceties. It's going back and forth, and then it turns into how can we help one another, how can we refer one another, et cetera, et cetera. You got to ask great questions to have that happen. You also have to have, and you've probably heard this before, an elevator speech. Now, I don't mean a rehearsed diatribe, but I mean a structured response to help keep you on track when people ask you about you. Now, when I go to events, and I go to a lot of them, because I love to meet people, but I also love to eavesdrop on what's going on or not going on, most people don't know how to answer the question about what they do and what they're looking to do, which means they're poorly prepared or they're just not focused on the right thing. Now, let me set this up. I teach a public speaking class at Rutgers University, and I teach networking concepts to my class because my students do not know how to talk to people. Now, when I say that to them, they think it's funny. I don't think it's funny at all because they really don't know how to talk to people. So we discussed the networking concepts. And one of the concepts that I discuss is an elevator speech. And I refer to it as a peace statement, P-E-E-C, which stands for profession, expertise, environments, and call to action. Now let me just sort of load this punch here. I teach the peace statement in my public speaking class. It's on the midterm and the final, so you kind of got to know it. I also invite my students that once they have their peace statement structured, I suggest that they go here, say this, meet these people. And what ends up happening is that the students come back and they do presentations, flawlessly, by the way, and they talk about what happened as a result. Often the result is, I can't believe it, but I just landed an internship. I can't believe it, but I just landed my dream career. And I'll say, really? But it's kind of force-fed, right? Because with the specifics, it's about where to go, what to say, with whom. So I've got great stories to tell. After they're done with me in my class, many students stay in touch. And I hear about the networking concepts and the landing of the employment and the whole thing. And I'm telling you, worth the price of admission. Profession, expertise, environments, call to action. Profession is who you are, what you do, and with whom. If you're a student, you might say something like, I'm a pharmaceutical major focused on a career in pharmaceutical sales. Pretty targeted, right? If you're a professional, you might say, I'm a pharmaceutical sales professional focused on growing my business within such and such region within medical groups. Expertise is your depth of knowledge, stuff you know. I tend to like it in threes. As a student, you might say, I'm developing my expertise in a number of areas, including, and just simply name 2 or 3 classes that are relevant to your career. Expertise, what you know. Environments, profession, expertise, environments. Environments is your target market, where you're looking to do your best work. You might say something like, I am targeting a career within the pharmaceutical industry with companies like, and mention 1 or 2 organizations. You'll create a trigger point with whom you're talking to. And then finally, call to action is specifically what it is that you are after. You might say something like, and I'm always looking to meet or be introduced to folks like. You might mention specific titles within that pharmaceutical organization or financial services or whatever it is that you're targeting. Any advice you have in terms of how I might make a connection like that, you might say, I would love your perspective. And you know what? You'll get it. Because if you ask the right question, you get the right answer. You don't ask the question, the answer is always no. It's about being structured. It's about the connection. The last rule I'm going to share is follow up. Because if you don't follow up with those that you meet and potentially connect with, it's like you've never met or connected with them. I talk to business professionals that stare at a stack of business cards on their desk in a snarl of rubber bands that reminds them of all the follow-up and follow-through that they did not do. And then they go back and they say, it's really tough to make connections, really tough to network, but is it really? Follow-up is key. Here's the best practice. Follow up within 24 hours of having met somebody, or whenever you decide will be appropriate. In fact, set up follow-up when you're still face-to-face, nose-to-nose, belly-to-belly with those that you are meeting and chatting with. And you might say something like, I would love to reconnect with you. What might be the best way to have that happen? Does it make sense for us to exchange cards or contact information? We language. I will absolutely follow up with you over the next day or so we can explore how we might help one another. Or so how I might follow up on the whatever is. So now when you send that email or pick up the phone, yes, pick up the phone. There's an app for that. You can follow through on your promises and be timely so that stack of business cards in a snarl of rubber bands doesn't remind you of what you didn't do, could have done, should have done, but what you have done. I live and breathe the connection, absolutely without question. Because in my classroom, I see what it's accomplished. In my business life, I see what it's accomplished. And I've got a lot of personal experience where I see where it's accomplished. Here's my call to action for you, is consider some of these ideas when you are focused on, when it's your time to learn what you need to learn, to land that job, to write that business, or find the love of your life. An absolute pleasure and privilege learning with you and from you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I have one follow-up question for you. As you probably know, Rutgers has many career fairs that bring hundreds of employers to campus. Can you give students a couple of quick tips on how to do the best connecting and networking in that sort of atmosphere?
Well, for starters, don't take up boxing. Right? You may not think as clearly. I've taken a number to the head. But as far as career fairs go, I like to be a little creative in terms of how you handle the interaction at a career fair, because everybody is there talking to the reps and looking to do the same thing. Right? Basically, here's my resume, which is kind of obvious. Here's the not so obvious approach that you might consider taking, is those people that are in the booth for whatever companies, in some cases it's hundreds that might be there, they are not prepared to talk about themselves because they know that everybody there is all about them, and maybe rightfully so. So when you meet those at a career fair, whether they're behind the booth or working the aisle, lead, throw your jab out in the form of questions that you might ask them. Ask them questions about their career, what their role is, what are some of their initiatives, What are some of the things that they're focused on right now? What are their career goals? Make it about them. Nobody does that. As soon as you make it about them, you're more likely to load up the punch in terms of a one-thirder connection where that person might be more motivated, focused, and inspired to help you do what you need to do. In fact, they'll spend more time with you because it'll be a connection. The other thing is, look to brainstorm with them when it's appropriate to find out others within their organization that you might potentially meet or be connected with or to. Profession, expertise, environments, call to action. And find out with whom you might collaborate or continue a connection with within their organization, and or how you might stay in touch with that person that's working in the booth. Again, it's just somebody else that you're looking to connect with at a cocktail party, at an association meeting, at an alumni event, at a wherever. And they're not used to that, so more likely they will take to what it is that you have to offer. They'll look out for you. They'll remember you. You'll follow up and follow through with them, perhaps develop a relationship, and man, I've got stories. Did I answer that? Good, very good. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.